Hey, everybody, welcome back to Difficult Conversations. Today, we're going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to go into an area that I'm going to be honest, I'm not an expert in what we're going to talk about tonight, but I have three people that are. So, tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about anti-Semitism and the effects that it's having on the country. So, I have three wonderful guests. I have Bobbi Mard, class of 94, fellow graduate. I have Ben Thaler, also class of 94. Both longtime friends, and I have Mark Snyder. Where if you live in southeastern Massachusetts, you have to know who he is. He's a journalist. He is somebody who's around town. He MCs events. So very well known. I'm very fortunate that the three of you took time away from your family to be here tonight. So probably a couple months ago, Bobbi reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm watching your show. I'm enjoying what you're doing, but here's an issue that I think would be of interest to you." Bobbi, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
I can. So the summer of 2020 is what I'm fondly referring to, or not so fondly, as the summer of anti-Semitism. And I reached out to you probably within the first few weeks of me struggling to digest and understand and accept things that I was seeing happening as far as anti-Semitism. So when I reached out to you is after, just to rewind for one moment, Deshaun Jackson of the Philadelphia Eagles over the summer kind of started this whole train rolling when he quoted Hitler, which it wasn't actually a Hitler quote, but he attributed it to Hitler and Farrakhan. And what was happening when he did that was Deshaun Jackson has 1.5 million followers on Instagram who are reading this information, and I want to quote what he said. So the quote was, "White Jews, so people like me, will blackmail America and they will extort America, but their plan for world domination won't work if the Negroes know who they were." So this is troubling to me on a lot of different levels. First, because he attributed that to Hitler, and obviously Hitler did not say that. Would not talk about the Black community in such a way. And also because once he shared that story and once it came to light, I went and read the comments, and they were all anti-Semitic and in support of what he had said, as opposed to saying, like, "You don't mean that. You don't want to quote Hitler." So when I reached out to you, Dean, was after there had been this fallout, and Steven Jackson had gone ahead and made a big deal out of Deshaun Jackson, and then we had Ice Cube coming out over the summer with his multiple posts about anti-Semitism. Pretty disgusting. It's not at a time when we're focusing, especially over the summer when Black Lives Matter was at its height. I was having trouble understanding how one community could treat another community like that. And I reached out to you because it's a hard conversation to have. And because you have difficult conversations, I thought this would be a good format to be able to, to kind of bring that to light.
Well said, Bobbi. I'm going to go to Ben now. Ben, how do you fit into this? How do you feel that this is affecting life as we know it, and how is this affecting your life?
I have to say that affecting my life, not really as much, because it's not directly affecting my life. I live in a rather a diverse town, but we do have a lot of Jews, and it has had a lot of Jews. And I grew up in a town that at the time, it had a lot of Jews, and I went to a summer camp that was Jewish. So all of my life, I went to a school, and I pledged a Jewish fraternity, and I surrounded myself with Jews. So it didn't really impact me at all. That's not to say that it wasn't there or that I didn't see it, but it wasn't as prevalent, I guess, at the time. But I think with a 24-hour news cycle, social media, just different platforms where people are able to get whatever they want to say off their chest, I think it's become more prevalent in society to say those types of things. And unfortunately, for some groups and some communities, it's become all too common and accepted.
Common and accepted. So you're seeing a rise in it, huh?
Absolutely. Like I said, a rise I would say doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't prevalent beforehand. But again, I just think the platforms that people have, allow them to spew whatever it is that they want to say, unfiltered keyboard warriors, as they say. Oh, I'm behind my keyboard. I can't get in trouble. I can say whatever I want. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't, actually affect communities and people and the way that they think, because this unfiltered access to whatever people want to say, you read it, and like Deshaun Jackson has 1.5 million followers. So if people say, hey, Deshaun Jackson believes it, all right, well, it must be true.
I agree with you 100%. In the age of social media, people are able to just kind of light fire to a situation and then just walk away as it burns with no consequences. All right. So I'm going to go to Mark on this. Mark, why don't you jump in on this? How are you seeing the rise in this alarming type of behavior, and how is it affecting your day to day?
It doesn't affect my day to day at all, because it just doesn't. But as a journalist, I look at this stuff all the time. And for instance, years ago when I was growing up, there were people who were anti-Semitic, and they had to reach out and find other people like themselves. Now, if you are anti-Semitic and you're on social media, you can find all kinds of folks who share your belief. In fact, 4.2 million anti-Semitic tweets were shared in the past year. That's according to Twitter. They removed that many. There's probably a lot more than that they haven't touched. So, that's a real problem. That and things like this. In America, they did a poll and they asked Americans if this is true. Jews have too much control or influence on Wall Street. 19% of Americans believe that to be true. And also, almost 15% of Americans believe that Jews are loyal to Israel more than America. Those kind of things are really dangerous. And that's what I follow. I'm following what's going out there. And I see the celebrities doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying. And it's very dangerous when people, you were just talking about one of them who did that, the sports star. That stuff is dangerous, and we have to watch it. And unfortunately, the social media companies really don't do a great job in terms of reeling it in.
All right, I got to go to Bobbi. Bobbi, I can tell you're feeling some kind of way. Jump on in now. I can tell by your body language. You want in.
I do want in on this conversation.
All right.
So I've certainly noticed a rise in anti-Semitism, and I can actually provide a recent incident that happened in a school in my town.
Please do. We love stories.
So, and it happened to a friend of mine's child. We have several schools in the town, but there's one school for the 4th to 6th grade. Very impressionable age group. My friend, who's Jewish, and her son, who is Jewish, her son was approached by somebody in school who gave her son the Heil Hitler sign, the Hitler salute, and used those words to him, Heil Hitler, to somebody that was in the 5th grade. The fact that it's happening in schools like that is incredibly disturbing when we preach teaching kids tolerance. You can't have it both ways. We need to be able to show our kids that this is wrong, but we have to start by demonstrating that ourselves and by giving them the proper education. And just like as a side note, the first time I ever experienced anti-Semitism was not in Stoughton, and I've experienced it for myself many, many times, but was not in Stoughton. It was, for those who don't know, I went to the University of Michigan. I'm very proud of that. And when we got way back in the olden days, when we got our roommates by mail, and then you had to, mail them and ask for a phone number because there was no internet back then. I got my roommate. I wrote and asked her for her phone number. My first conversation with her via phone included the question from me, "What religion are you?"
You asked that question.
I asked that question.
Can I ask why?
because I want to see if there's like-minded people around me. Like, I grew up in a Jewish community. I grew up in a Jewish household. I feel very comfortable. It's a community. I feel very comfortable around my own community. And I know that there was a, larger population of Jewish people that went to Michigan, one of the reasons that I chose the school. And I wanted to know who I was living with. And to me, religion doesn't matter at all. You can be any religion. I really don't care. And I'm actually really interested in other religions. But this woman said back to me, and at the time we were 18, when she asked me what religion I was, I said Jewish. And she responded to me, the only thing that I know about the Jews is that they killed Jesus. So, needless to say, I switched my room pretty quickly, but that was my first encounter with somebody actually saying something like that to me. Like, in Stoughton, that doesn't happen. I didn't get that in high school. We have kids of all races and religions in Stoughton, and in the high school, it was a nice microcosm for the outside world, I think.
So, Bobbi, let me jump in real quick on that. All right. So, clearly not appropriate what was said.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the high school. I mean, to the school issue.
Yeah.
So what was the school's response to that?
Well, my friend got a phone call immediately. The child reported it. My friend received a phone call immediately. The other parents also received a phone call immediately. What we found to be really interesting is that this child is Indian. So it's like one minority group saying something to another minority group in town. It's very complicated issues,
Yeah.
So we don't think the kid actually knew what he was saying, to be honest.
It makes it very difficult for the school nowadays, because now a lot of what they've done, a lot of discretion's been taken away from school administrators. So now they literally, it's almost like they have checklists. And it's one protected class versus another protected class, which complicates things.
It does.
So that's all good stuff. Mark, go ahead.
Students had some issues, though.
I haven't lived there in a long time.
Because there have been a number of incidents of swastikas and Hitler references in the school system, and they were not responded to well by a previous superintendent of schools. It was covered up, and the only reason it came out was because I had it on my column. And that kind of stuff's not good. I think that they take control of the stuff. First of all, they are doing a pretty good job of educating on the Holocaust still. They have a teacher who's been teaching a course at Stoughton High School for years, and that's a good thing. But a lot of the school systems have really lost their track on the Holocaust, and a number of kids growing up don't know really about the Holocaust. They think that it's an exaggeration, it may not have happened, because they're reading all this stuff on social media and not getting educated in the classroom. I think that's a major problem.
This is a natural segue for me to go to Ben. Ben, again, I could see you. We played sports together, and I know that look, man. Ben wants to come in, and he wants to make a difference. Ben, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Mark, it could not have been a better segue. It could not have been a better segue. There was, I was doing a little research on this. Wanted to make sure that we had a good in-depth conversation on all this, and then just wanted a couple of points, to back up what we were saying. And it was actually a study done, and I want to quote this properly, by the United States Millennial Holocaust Knowledge and Awareness Committee in 2018, and they studied millennials. They studied 1,000 millennials across the entire 50 states. 63% did not know that 6 million Jews were killed. 36% said it was under 2 million. 48% could not name one concentration camp, and 20% of millennials and Generation Z in New York felt that Jews caused the Holocaust. Now, New York City specifically has a big Jewish population, big Orthodox Jewish population as well. And if you've seen the rise in anti-Semitic attacks, just in the Orthodox community in New York alone, it's really disconcerting. And we were talking about that before. It's not just Jews that were exterminated in these camps. It's anyone who's disabled, gay people, anyone who wasn't Aryan were round up and exterminated. So it wasn't just Jews. There just happened to be more Jews than anyone else. But for people not to have this type of education about everything that went on, it is really a challenge for the older generations to say, how come you don't know this, and what are we missing? Why do you not know this?
I'm dumbfounded.
Disconnect.
Ben, I am dumbfounded. I've heard a lot of things crazy. Obviously, I'm a minority, and I've heard crazy things. But the the Jewish people started the Holocaust, like they caused it.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, that's a special kind of conspiracy theory right there. That is crazy. Bobby, I'm gonna come back to you, and I want to go to Mark, because Mark, you have seniority here, so this stuff. Had you ever heard anything like that before? Like the Holocaust was?
Yes. Yes. That actually, the study that he quoted from did get wide exposure in the mainstream media. I mean, people know about that. So, and again, I think that we're from Stoughton, so we know that the Stoughton schools actually did do education on this end. But a lot of school systems around the country have shirked their responsibility in teaching the Holocaust. And that's one of the reasons why the millennials that are growing up have no background on it. They don't know what actually happened. And the history books are changing. It's very interesting. A lot of people don't know this, but many of the textbooks that have been put in the school systems were paid for by Saudi Arabia. They actually provided textbooks to American schools where Israel was excised from the books and the Holocaust was changed. And a lot of schools were teaching with their books. People didn't know this because they went through different foundations where the money came. That you got to trace the money. And that's sometimes a chore that the media doesn't want to do. They take the easy way out. But that's what's happening.
That's not just the media, Mark. In my line of work too, my day job, those of you that are new to the show, my day job, I am a police officer. And that happens a lot with drug investigations. Sometimes you don't want to chase the money because crime and specific acts are finite. You usually can isolate those. But when you start chasing money, there's no telling how deep that rabbit hole goes. And it sounds like this is that same kind of situation. All right, great point. Bobby, you want to in on this?
All right. Well, I did want to make everybody aware of something in regards to education and why our students are not aware of it. I'm not sure if anybody knows. I know, and I'm sure the people in this group know. But only 15 states in our country mandate Holocaust education at the secondary school level. 15 states. Massachusetts is not one of them. Once I found that out, and just by the way, Delaware was actually the 15th state, and it was added late in the summer. As soon as I found out that Massachusetts was not included in that list, which to be honest was pretty shocking to me, I immediately started doing some investigating on my own within the town. How are they teaching about the Holocaust in town? What have they done in the past? What are they doing now? I'm very lucky. I have friends who are administrators in both the town and at the state level, and I was able to review the state's curriculum that they do provide the schools in a lot of detail, as well as our Westboro schools curriculum. I think a huge problem is this. The generation that fought in World War II and the generation that were captive in concentration camps, they're dying out. Most of them are gone. It was a while ago now. And with them goes their stories. All of those firsthand account of survival stories, stories about being in those camps, stories about living through the Holocaust, they're fading. And it's our generation's responsibility to be repeating those kind of stories to our kids, to make sure that those lessons are not lost. Because if we fail to educate them, history is doomed to repeat itself. That's the way things go.
I got to jump in on this because I couldn't agree with you more about that point. About at some point, yes, schools need to adapt and change their curriculum according to the times. But we also have to remember, we've all been in school. There's really only 6 hours of learning a day that happens in school. So we can only put so much of this in school. You have to go, what's happening in the other 18 hours in that day? So this has to happen at home. It has to happen in your organizations, your community groups. We can't just put this on the schools because this is. And I'm not saying you are, but this is a conversation we've also had about Black history. Yep. So it's literally we're saying the same exact thing. Where Black history, as you know, we were all in school together. Like really the only thing we learned in elementary school was that blacks were slaves.
Yep.
And that was a horrible day for me.
I'm
I
sure
never talked
there
about it
was.
with you folks, but that was a horrible day because I was the only black kid in the class my entire elementary school career. And now everybody's turning around, they're looking at me and this and that. And it's just, that was an awful day. It would have been better if there was more substance and they told more positive stories about what was going on.
Yeah.
Just like Bobbi, I remember your mother used to come up to the school.
Yeah.
And another contingent of Jewish parents, mothers mostly, would come up and they would talk about Hanukkah and they would talk about the traditions and they'd make those amazing potato latkes for everybody.
I love those.
I can still taste them, you know. So, but
You'll
that's
have to
the
come
kind
to
of
my house. I'll make them for you this
you're
year.
not going to have to ask me twice. but that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen. Mark, I'm going to go to you real quick, then I'm going to hit the comments. Go ahead, Mark.
I actually want to just make I hate to do this, but I'm going to do a cheap plug because talking about the Holocaust, I actually was a producer of a movie called Etched in Glass, the Stephen Ross story, and it's premiering on WGBH TV Channel 2 on November 12th at 9 p.m. So it's a really good film about a Holocaust survivor.
Mark, so what I'm going to have you do is, can you please put the information for that in the chat? So everybody out there, please pay attention to the chat. Mark's got a great project that's coming up, and he thinks that it bears on this conversation. It's something that could be enlightening for everybody. So really quick, let's hit the chat because it's lighting up right now. All right, I'm going to go way back. We had Derek Small, which I put on the screen, class of 94, doing great stuff. Thank you, Derek. He's a school administrator and a very good friend of mine and a classmate of ours. Michael Powell says, it's even more important than a proper education in regards to teaching about tolerance and diversity is what is being taught in the home or the living environment.
Yep.
Mike, outstanding point. And as always, Mike, you're razor sharp with your comments. All right, we have Brett. Brett says, fellow Jewish Wolverine here.
Hey,
My freshman roommate was a big football player from Texas, and we became good friends. Definitely intimidating, though. All right. What else do we have here? We have Shari says, thank you for having this conversation with a hot sign. I think there's at least one person in here that knows and loves Shari. All right. Kevin says, I feel like I'm back in the old neighborhood. Love listening to all of you. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate the love, and we appreciate you coming through. David Neville says the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. is highly recommended. All right.
Tough one to go through.
So,
go ahead, Bobbi.
Just as an aside, Dave, thank you for bringing that up. Holocaust museums are one of the best places for kids to learn these days, and I'd highly recommend taking your children to one of them. There's an enormous one in Washington, D.C., so maybe when the world's a little bit more normal and we're traveling again, but there are also local Holocaust museums. So look one up and take your kids.
So this shape, for those of you that are watching, we have people in different parts of the country that have started taking interest in the show. We are located in Massachusetts. All of us live in Massachusetts, mostly Eastern Massachusetts. I think Bobbi is on the corner of central-ish now. Do we have anything in Massachusetts or in New England?
We have a Boston Holocaust, which is actually
Boston Holocaust.
It's etched in glass. There's a big glass thing. In fact, someone smashed it up, and it was damaged, and they had to fix it. But it has the names of all the victims, of all the people who died in the Holocaust. There's millions of names, tiny little lettering on huge sheets of glass, and it's incredible. But I'll tell you something.
It's super public too.
The one in Washington is just unbelievable. Yeah, they have one of the box cars. You walk in that, and you travel back in time and feel the pain of those people. You can hear their screams. It is just incredible. There's no better education than that.
So for those of you that are younger, what Mark's referring to as the boxcars are the boxcars that were used to transport a lot of the prisoners to the concentration camps. Is that correct, Mark?
Not prisoners. Jewish
they
people.
They transport families to the
families.
Jewish families. Yes.
Jewish families that would then become prisoners at these camps. Yes.
There were so many people in the boxcars that they couldn't even stand. They were. It's an incredible thing. So do some research. You can find pictures on the internet. It's out there. You don't have to go to the museums. You can educate yourself on Google if you have to. I mean, it's out there.
100%. But I think, like we say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. What is actually being in one of those boxcars worth? 1,000,000 words, 1,000,000,000 words? You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, like you said,
Years ago,
being in there will really drive it home for a lot of folks. A couple quick comments I want to get to. Elena says, Bobbi and Ben, you have young kids. What conversations do you have around this with your kids? And how do you teach them to respond and react if they come across anti-Semitism? All right, so Ben, let's start with you.
So again, I live in a town that is pretty diverse, but it does have a large Jewish population. But that doesn't mean that these things don't happen. So we try to talk to them, and obviously, in any type of situation, unless they're actually forced to defend themselves, walk away. Because these people are so ignorant, they're not worth it, and they're just looking to get a rise out of you. So ignore them and walk away. But we want them to tell us, because we want them to be able to have a conversation about it. Tell us how they're, how they made them feel, whatever it is that person said to them. Thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. I'm not saying that it won't, just thankfully that it hasn't, but I'm assuming that it will. And at that time, hopefully they'll know enough where just to ignore it and walk away, and then tell us, and we can have a conversation about it and go at it from that front. Because the people that say these things, either, like to Bobby's point, they probably don't even know what they're saying, but at some point they are going to know what they're saying, and they're doing it for a specific purpose to get a specific reaction out of them. So I'm hoping that they are able to have some good sense, walk away, ignore them, and then we can deal with it, at a different time.
Same question to you, Bobby.
And of course, Alina, for those who don't know, is one of my closest friends. And I was going to joke and say I'd tell her Auntie Alina and go, and that she'll go beat people up for them. But that's not really where we're going here. So, because Lila was exposed to that incident it was one of her closest friends' brothers, who received that Heil Hitler salute. Because of that, I had to have a pretty intense conversation with Lila, because she was really upset. So when we had a conversation about that, I try to explain to her, because I think that, and I mean, and maybe, I don't know if Mark and Ben agree, but I think that anti-Semitism is the oldest form of hatred. And it's been around forever. And I want my daughter to understand that she won't change people's minds if they're resolute against disliking Jewish people, but that those people just don't belong in her life anyway. So we've tried to explain to her that people will say and do things that she finds horrible. Speak up against it if it's if somebody else is being harmed. We expect for you to stand up to that person, stand up and help that person. And if it's you, I would hope that your friends will stand up.
What are you doing with your kids?
Well, it's interesting.
When they were younger, what did you do?
Well, I was just thinking that the way we raised our kids, if everybody did the same thing, we wouldn't have a problem, because our house was colorblind, religious blind, everything blind. We had people of all stripes at our house. My son played football. He was the quarterback, so we had all the kids on the football team. It was quite a group of different people from Jews. Actually, I don't think there was any of the Jewish kids on the team, but most of the kids were of color, and they were great. It's a wonderful thing. They're all family. All these kids are family right now, still. 10 years after graduation. So they don't think they really ran into a lot of problems with anti-Semitism growing up in Stoughton. None of the kids that I talked to, my kids didn't share that kind of problem. But they were friends with a lot of kids who had families like us that welcomed everybody in the home and spoke nicely about everybody. And I think that and we encouraged kids to come over on Sunday night for a Chinatown dinner. We had lots of kids over, and we had big Italian food dinners with meatballs for everybody. This is the kind of thing we did, and a lot of the other kids did the same thing. And I think we need more of that. We need more parents getting together with their kids and teaching them that, we don't judge people by the color of their skin, by their religion. We judge them by their character. I mean, it's been said many times. Martin Luther King said it the best. But I mean, it's true. And I think that if more people brought their kids up like that, there'd be a lot less problems in our world.
I have to agree with you on that. So I'm going to jump in on this because Ben said something that really brought me back to our childhood about, how to handle it when someone, particularly a kid, says it to another kid. All right. Now, your boys are a little bit older than you and I were when I transferred into the given school, but, it didn't take long for somebody to bring up the color of my skin in a very derogatory way. So I'm not going to say I disagree with what you said as far as walking away, but sometimes it doesn't hurt, even as a young kid, to maybe ask a couple follow-up questions like, well, what made you say that? Or why are you coming at me that way? Now granted, I'm not, that could lead to, well, not nowadays, kids don't fight anymore, but back before when kids fought, that led to me getting into, I'm sure you remember, I got into a few dust-ups back in the day over that kind of stuff. But sometimes it helps to get to have a discussion, and you'll get to somebody else say, you know what, I don't even know why I said that. Or, you know what, somebody at home said it, and I just was repeating it. I don't really know what it means, or I saw it on a show. Because that kind of stuff matters. Context matters. Because if I, wasn't friends with every kid that said something that was a little on the fringes racially as a kid, like I would have crossed a decent amount of kids off the list. Yeah. Because, you know what I mean? Because it was things that maybe they heard from older siblings or parents, but it wasn't necessarily what was in their heart. So
I want to say something, share something about Randolph, because that's where I grew up before you guys. But in the 70s, there were people walking down Randolph High School's corridors saying, Jew, Jew, Jew. There was a lot of anti-Semitism when I went to school. It was prevalent there. And a lot of those kids, were really, really nasty individuals who would rob kids and put their heads in the toilets. And this is the kind of stuff that was going on in the 1970s in Randolph, okay? And now all those kids, when we go to the reunions, they've all changed, and many of them have apologized for their behavior. Some haven't because they don't remember what they did. But I remember it. I remember every single thing that people said to me when I was growing up. And I've welcomed all these people into my life that have come over to me now. They're all thinking that, they all say to me, oh, we were friends in high school. I didn't know any of these kids, except the fact that they tortured me. But, I'm still friendly with them because I don't hold grudges. But what I'm saying is that was a prevalent thing in the 70s in Randolph. And now it's a very diverse town. Back then, it wasn't as diverse. There was a lot of Jewish people in Randolph, and there was also others that weren't, and they fought.
And I hear you on Randolph. Again, like Bobbi brought up my speech earlier when we were talking backstage that I gave at a high school. We ended up in Stoughton because we were essentially, I don't know what the official term is. I don't know if it's called redlining or what, where we weren't really shown very good properties in Randolph, and because they didn't necessarily want black families there back in the 70s. And lo and behold, now Randolph is probably the most diverse town in New England. So that's how we ended up in Stoughton.
Two black kids in our class growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very good. Oh, but they're great people. But back then, I can just imagine how they felt listening to you before, talking about your experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is something that hits home with all of us. But I would encourage both of you, both Bobbi and Ben, to at least consider what I'm saying. That if it's somebody that that is a peer of your children's and they say something, maybe ask a follow-up question or two. And if it gets hostile, then by all means. But sometimes getting to the why, I know that when we went to school and I did that with kids that said things to me, it helped. Sometimes I got apologies, and some people I became friends with to this day. So that's just something to consider. And Mark, I want to just touch on something you said about you grew up in a colorblind house, or you raised a colorblind house. The colorblind thing, again, this is just my personal feeling towards it. It is a great sentiment, and it is something that sounds great, but I know as far as being a man of color, like that's not something that I have the option of being. Like, for example, I walk into a room. I'm a big guy as it is. I'm 6'1". I'm 200 plus pounds. All right. And I walk in the room, everybody knows that I am black. So I don't have the option of just saying, hey, pay no attention to my black skin. I'm the same as everybody else. All right. So what my preference is when you see me, maybe you acknowledge the fact that I'm black, or I would acknowledge the fact that Bobbi or Ben is Jewish. And I say, you know what? I don't care about that. I care about how you treat me. like you said, now we go back to the content of the character, because
Right.
sometimes it almost sounds as if it almost sounds dismissive when you say, all right, hey, I'm colorblind, like you're dismissing that other culture. You know what I mean? And again, it's not intentional. I get it. It's not intentional. I don't get mad, but I know that I've spoken to people, younger black kids, myself, that, as a preference, I would say I want you to embrace the fact that I'm black, and I want you to embrace the fact that I'm black, you're white, you're Jewish, and you know what? We love each other. And we care about each other. And if you needed me, I'd be there for you in a second, and vice versa. Go ahead. Who wants to respond to that first? Everybody kind of jumped up at once, so I'll go to Mark first.
Well, all I know is that the kids that came in our house, no matter what color they were, call my wife mom and me dad, and we're very close. And we've never had a discussion about what color we are or what religion we are. It never came up.
Because it doesn't matter to you, because you care about the content of the character.
It was about football, and it was about getting together and having fun, and brotherhood, and that's it. That kind of thing. I understand what you're saying, and I was thinking that if we had everybody in our house and there was one individual of color and everybody else was white, they might feel a little bit awkward. But it was really a diverse crowd all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's because my son, his friends are diverse. He is actually a professional rapper. So picked a weird thing for a Jewish guy. But, hey,
there's Modest Yahoo out there. So
yeah, just know, Mark, you're not going to get away with that. We are going to circle back to that at some point. All right. Ben, Bobbi, do you have a response to that? And then we'll move on.
I do. So,
go ahead, Bobbi.
And what I usually say is, and I think that term colorblind, well, I think I used to use it too, and then I realized that's actually kind of hurtful. So what I choose to impart to my daughter, and the way that I live my life and the way my husband lives his life, is that if we meet somebody and they're kind to us, we like them and we can be friends. If we encounter somebody who is not nice and is cruel to us, we don't have to be friends. And that takes away all of the, race, religion. It takes all of that out of these statements. It's all about being able to embrace everybody and to just impart to your kids. And I can't explain to you how much I've tried to do this with my daughter, that you have to get to know people before you can make a judgment about them.
Ben, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ben. I'm going to stop you there, Bobbi, because you can't go any higher than you just did. You're on the top of the mountain with that comment. Ben, go ahead.
But as I mentioned, the town in which I live is pretty diverse. Has a pretty diverse community. My boys are friends with Jews and non-Jews. My boys are friends with Asians. My boys are friends with black kids in their class. Indian, but it doesn't matter. They don't see them as whatever their race or ethnicity or religion. It's just who's nice to them and who they like hanging out with. Those kids are nice to them and they're nice back. And they like hanging out. They ride bikes, they play sports, whatever. They don't see them as anything other than these kids in my town that are nice to me and we're friends. And if we can just have all of those generations grow up with that same sentiment, then maybe we can change this.
I can't agree with you more. I'm just going to talk about one thing. Both of you, it's interesting that I have both of you here, because both of you had sets of parents that really made me feel great and really made me feel wanted. But in particular, Bobbi's mother, your mother and I always had a synergy. We always did. And Ben, your father at sporting events, he would referee. He would always talk to me differently. We were always able to, I don't know. There was just something about the way that your mother and your father treated me that I'll never forget, and if I didn't thank them for it, I wish I had of, because they always made me feel included. They always made me feel special. They always made me feel like I mattered. And that was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's important that you both know that. So we got a comment here. All right. So Mike says, it amazes me that no matter how many atrocities occur in human history, that there are people who continue to discriminate against others based on race, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, etc. We are all human, and as a society, we need to. It looks like it got cut off.
I
All
can
right.
see it. It
Can you?
says we need to find ways to learn from history, prevent it from repeating, and treat everyone with the dignity and respect they deserve. Bravo.
All right, Mark, I'm going to go to you. What's your solution for this? How do we implement this?
Well, I agree with it, but I don't. We can't implement anything. It has to come from the homes. It has to come from the house. Has to come from the media. Has to be doing this kind of stuff. The schools have to be doing this kind of stuff. It's a total society has to do this. It can't just be us. I wish it could be.
And when I say us, I mean society. So it has to be a societal buy-in, is what you're saying.
It has to be a buy-in all the way through. It has to be through education. It has to be through the government. I mean, everybody has to be on the same page. And unfortunately, right now in our country, we're at a precipice of division, and it also affects these kind of items too. You know.
Ben, same question.
Education, you know, at all levels. But I think that, you know, Mark touched upon government, and it's challenging, you know, to make sure that, you know, we're educating our kids in a certain way when we don't see it being followed through, perhaps, you know, at the highest levels, you know, of government. You talked about protected classes. Some protected classes are more protected than others, you know, so it's that balance that we're trying to get. Like, we're trying to get everybody to buy in, be like, why don't we just all believe this, you know, because we should, because it's better for everybody. And then, you know, the generations that grow up, you know, there wouldn't be any racism, there wouldn't be any anti-Semitism, because it wouldn't exist anymore, because no one would practice it. You know, but that's not realistic. Obviously, that's pie in the sky. I understand that. Some people are always going to teach that Jews started the Holocaust. People are always going to teach that Black people are inferior. And it's just the way that they are, you know, and I don't know that there's any way to change those people. But if we change enough people's minds, maybe we can do something.
So to your point, and you're right, I tried to get you all to fall into a little trap there, you know, and see if anybody would take the bait and say, oh, there's a wholesale fix and we can get everybody all at once. The fact of the matter is, and again, as a police officer, I know this better than most, you can't save everybody. You just can't. It's just not mathematically possible. But what you can do, to Ben's point, is you can focus on the people that are on the fence, and you can try to pull them to your side or push them to the other side, one way or the other. You know, but the people that are hardcore one way or the other, that's just, they've kind of made up their mind, and it's they're content to just yell and scream over one another instead of trying to have a difficult conversation like we're doing here tonight. All right, so
education really is important, because ignorance is the thing that causes a lot of this stuff. And if you're ignorant and you can learn, if you are willing to learn, you can change your whole thing. I mean, I saw that with people I grew up with, and you mentioned it yourself, that you grew up with some people that changed. So it can change. Ignorance is not an excuse, but it's what people, that's what happens with anti-Semitism and racism and you know, all these different isms, because of ignorance. When people are educated and they understand the ramifications of what they're doing, they don't do it. You know, I really think that that's the key to everything is education. You touched upon it, but it's really.
Go ahead, Mark. And that educational process starts in a forum just like this, where you have a discussion and you talk about things that people typically are uncomfortable, makes people want to go the other way, because it's not warm. This is not a warm and fuzzy topic we're having right now. It's very much cold and prickly. All right. Like we learned back when we were in school. And to Ben's point earlier, if we treated everybody well, it would really just be listen to your kindergarten teacher. Because I think every kindergarten in America, you know, you learn these basic principles of how to teach people, but somewhere along the line that message gets muddled and we move away from it. So I'm just going to go a couple quick comments here. You know, again, you're here on Difficult Conversations by Supply the Why. We have Mark Snyder, we got Bobbi Sheff, and we got Ben Thaler. So
I know you
I'm
want
sorry,
to call me
Bobbi Mard.
Nobody's
You know
called me
what?
that in a long time.
Because we started going back in the day, and I immediately went back to how I knew you.
There you
You
go.
know, it always flowed. Bobbi Sheff. You know what I mean?
It did, didn't
I'd
it?
say it all at the same
Not the
thing.
same anymore.
So we got a comment from Diane Druckman Thaler. I think that somebody here is pretty close with that young lady as well. She says, we're listening and Ed is smiling. That makes me very, very happy to know that your parents are watching and that they're proud of what we're here doing. That really means a lot to me. We have Aubrey Mard says, thank you, Bobbi, for inviting me to listen this evening. Intelligent and thought-provoking commentary. Aubrey, that means a lot. Well, thank you, Aubrey. And again, I'm sorry. I know it's Mard and not Chef. I know that now, so I apologize. But thank you for stopping by, Aubrey, and now you're seeing a little bit about what we're about here at Supply the Y.
I think you should actually be reading the comment from someone named Heidi Lynn. Don't you think?
I'm gonna get there. I
Really, I really think you should look at that.
Diane is very proud of the Gibbons School grads, and Amy says, treat people the way you want to be treated. It's that simple. All right.
100%.
So this is a question. So how do we ensure that our towns and cities are doing their part in educating the community? This is from Heidi Jenkins. Very lovely young lady. Phenomenal cook, by the way. All right. So let's talk. Let's go to that. So how do we ensure that our towns and cities are doing their part in the education? Mark, you're pretty hooked in with educational world.
I've always felt with my own kids and other kids I see, it's important to have parents involved. Parent involvement is the biggest part of education. And if you ask teachers, they'll tell you that kids who have parents involved do much better than the kids who don't. And I think that we have to assure that our schools are teaching Holocaust education, that they're teaching diversity, that they're teaching all these different things nowadays and planting it in the kids from a young age. And that's up to parents to insist that it be done.
Bobbi, floor's yours.
Yeah, so something that I would do, and by the way, hi Heidi Lynn. I'm like excited to meet your wife. What I would recommend is doing something like what I did, especially if you live in Massachusetts and you know that they're not mandating any kind of Holocaust education here. I would reach out to your school administration and ask for the curriculum. I would reach out to any kind of state administrators that you may have contact with, like educational state administrators, and ask them to include Holocaust education as being mandatory for Massachusetts. I have been pushing away at these things, both within my town and within the state, and then in a larger sense within the Northeast, for the past several months. So if anybody wants tips on how to approach this, please feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. I'm Barbara Sheff Mard on Facebook, so you'll be able to find me that way. And I can certainly help you in creating the right connections and getting to the bottom of trying to get the right education in place.
Bobbi, I'm going to have you put your contact information in the chat, and that goes for everybody. So, Mark, I know you have. It'll probably take you a year to put all your stuff in with all your things, your projects, and things like that. But if you have the energy, please put your stuff. Put all your information in the chat so people can keep in touch with you, because I'm sure that a lot of people that are watching this, they've been enlightened, much like I've been enlightened, and they're going to want to keep in touch with you. Ben, I'm going to go to you. What are your thoughts?
You know, it's not much different, you know, from what Mark and Bobbi said. You know, it's education in the home, you know, as well as being loud, you know, calling school administrators, writing letters, you know, just being the squeaky wheel and making sure that people know that you're there and you're asking for this and you provide the information and reasons why it's important. You know, I think we've all discussed over the last 45 minutes plus or so why this information is important based on that study where people don't even know that it exists or they think that Jews started it. There's just so much, to Mark's point, ignorance, and it's not necessarily stupidity. It's just they don't know and they haven't been taught, which goes to the education piece. So I think just being loud and trying to get in front of people and say, hey, you know, if we've got the resources, let's see if we can put this into the curriculum. We think it's really beneficial.
Outstanding. Another quick comment we have here. We have Michael Powell says, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your experiences. Good stuff. The more you know, the more you grow. I think that is that from an after-school special from when we were kids? I think that from one of those, like the snippets or something when we were kids. So Heather says, I've been showing more love for people and my country more than ever before. The world need it now more than ever. Amen to that.
Yep. Amen.
So I know this is going to sound crazy, folks, but we're already 50 minutes in. All right, we're under 10 minutes left in the show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a question here that I think that each one of you can do in about 2 minutes. Give your last word, and then we're going to be done for the night. All right, so
is there a post-show party?
I wish there was. If this COVID thing ever goes away, Mark, man, I promise we're going to do it up in person. All right, so here's the question. All right, I'm going to start with Mark. I'm going to go to Ben, then I'm going to go to Bobbi. Why is it that this issue has not gained much traction in social media and on the news?
Well, actually, it has a lot of traction on social media. There are many, many posts about anti-Semitism.
All right, I guess I'm going to go to Mark first. Mark, go ahead. You go first.
I thought you said Mark was first.
Did I? I thought it said Bobbi then Mark. All right, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
There's a lot of conversation on social media about anti-Semitism. And there's a lot of anti-Semitism on social media. So, the conversation's out there. The media doesn't really want to, they have their own narration. They have their own agenda. And that's what they follow. And I am a member of the media. I've been a member for 40 years. I'm one of the people who doesn't follow the agenda. But I get it. I get it every day in my email. I know exactly what they're going to say on some of the network stations. So if people want to make it as something to talk about, they have to be loud, they have to be aggressive, and they have to make their voices heard. And call a guy like me, we'll write about it. You know what I mean? You got to find a friendly journalist. And, the conversation has to be had. And again, the louder it is, and the more people get knowledge about what's going on, and their ignorance is taught, and they change, the better this country's going to be. And it's one house at a time, one community at a time, one state at a time, and one nation at a time.
Outstanding. Mark, please make sure you get your information in there. I know people are going to want to reach out to you, so please let people know how they can get in touch with you. Go ahead, real quick. Just let people know.
I'm unlisted.
Unlisted? So if somebody wants to reach out to you to get their story out there, do you want them to email you?
I'm on Facebook. Snyder Sandwich, Snyder Stoughton, Mark Snyder, Snyder Stoughton. I mean, you can find me. Just do a Google of Mark Snyder celebrity interviewer. It comes up. That's what people are looking at. Someone's got to do it.
All right. Next.
Because you're saying last, so I think that's me. It's not sexy. Anti-Semitism, I'm going to say it. Anti-Semitism is not sexy, right? It doesn't sell, it doesn't get clicked, and people are too consumed with themselves. They're consumed with making the perfect duck face and getting that perfect selfie to post on their Instagram feed so they can get, likes and followers, and because that is status these days. People aren't concerned about anti-Semitism. It's out there, and yes, people like us are talking about it, and some in the media mention it, and there are articles out there, and sometimes they'll do a local story on, a swastika that was spray painted on a local synagogue, but that doesn't lead, because it didn't bleed. So,
I see what you did there. Okay.
So it's just not sexy enough. But if we continue to have these conversations, and the more that these conversations are had and the more that they're shared, perhaps the more that they're discussed and people want to learn more and they'll become more educated. And as we discussed already, education is the key. So hopefully we can do something about this.
Outstanding. Last but definitely not least.
Oh, it's my turn. So I think Ben's absolutely right with it not being sexy, and I think all three of us work in media. So, what I would say is that anti-Semitism, it doesn't fit today's narrative. We're living in the powder keg of COVID, and we have a Black Lives Matter movement that's going on, and it's kind of way down there. But I also think that it doesn't get the attention because of what Mark said, where the Jewish people are not standing up screaming for coverage. We're not standing up yelling that this is, a bad thing that's happening. I mean, I have been personally, but I don't speak on behalf of my whole community. So I think it's really an issue with, to be honest, more Jewish people need to take this very seriously. And our comrades need to take it seriously and really step up the support, because it's gross, the stuff that I read on Facebook. I mean, I wish you could have sat in my shoes over the summer while I cried while I read comments on Facebook. It's very upsetting, but it's also where a lot of these battles are kind of taking place. So I'd say if we want coverage, we gotta be the squeaky wheel. The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Well said. Well, we're up against it. We're down to about a couple minutes left. I can't thank you all enough for taking the time out to do this show. You can tell by the response in the chat, and I know that this is going to get shared a bunch because I don't hear many forums like this discussing this issue, and hopefully this is the start of something. And it's something that I know you're passionate about, and I know it's something that is near and dear to your heart. Now that I've been made aware of it, and it's in my face, I can't just sit back and say nothing about it either. All right, so a couple quick shout outs for the night. So if you've noticed behind me and you've been following the show for a while, I want to give a shout out to Meeting House Mill for the beautiful background that they were able to provide for me. So Karen at Meeting House Mill, she can handle all your crafting needs. You need cups, you need etched glass, you need backgrounds for your talk shows. See Karen at Meeting House Mill. She does amazing work, and she really is a magician. All right. Also, I also want to give a shout out to KP Designs for the shirts. They have put together this logo and put this together. Again, I couldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for certain people supporting me, and I want to thank everybody that's been supporting us and that's understand the mission of Supply the Why. So really quick, Bobbi, any particular social media or anything like that you want to direct people to before we go?
I do. So I want to let everybody know about the Anti-Defamation League, which is the ADL. It is not the be all end all of Jewish resources, but it is a half decent one. Mark doesn't like it. They have a really good incident tracker though that I like. So where you can see all of current anti-Semitic incidents. It's also very grounded in the left. So I think that's why some people don't really love the organization. There's a couple of others that I'd suggest checking out. One of them.
All right, you got about 30 seconds.
Sorry, Anti-Semitism.org. I'd recommend going to a Holocaust museum, and also the Jewish Council for Public Affairs at jewishpublicaffairs.org. We'll have a lot of information for you too.
Outstanding. Ben, anything that you want to direct anybody's attention to? Any causes you want to shout out?
There's an Instagram account. I know I just spent a couple of minutes railing at social media, so it's just kind of funny. But there is an Instagram account. It's called Jewish on Campus, and it does allow people to anonymously post some anti-Semitic instances that happen to them, mostly on college campuses, and they are all vetted before they are posted publicly. I also do actually want to say my boys are actually celebrating their bar mitzvah this Saturday. It's all in the age of COVID, and there's no party, and their grandparents can't even be there to see it, and everything is online, and it's awful. And I feel really badly that they have to do such an actual mitzvah for their Jewish heritage and their Jewish upbringing in an age like this. But they have been rock stars, and they are studying so super hard, and I'm really proud of them, and I can't wait to see what they do on Saturday.
Well, congratulations, boys. Mark, I'll leave it to you. You got about 30 seconds, Mark. You got anything?
Just a reminder, Etched in Glass, the Holocaust movie, is premiering at WGBH TV November 12th at 9 p.m. I was an associate producer on the film. It's a great film. And if anybody wants to reach me, they can write to pmpco@aol.com. I do answer my email. Have a wonderful night, and thanks for inviting us on.
You guys were fantastic. You I mean, I knew you were going to be great, but you really, all three of you knocked it out of the park. Mark, I know that this is what you do. You're in the media and you're making things happen. Bobbi and Ben, clearly you guys are comfortable speaking. You're marketers. So I'm proud of all of you, and I'm glad we were able to have this difficult conversation tonight.
Thank you so much for the
Thank you, Dean.
All right, folks, check out the Supply the Why Facebook page, Supply the Why YouTube channel, and we got more coming. Stay tuned for some exciting announcements. All right, good night, folks.
Good night. Another pleasant tomorrow.